The average rent in the United States across all forms of housing is over $1,950 a month. Prices are falling in the West and South, but still rising in the Midwest and Northeast.
When we moved here, it was around $4,000. In 2023, it's over $6,700.
We were going to get a 23% increase, which we felt was like an eviction notice. It was an eviction notice.
Experts say the U.S. needs to build over 4 million new apartment homes by 2035 to keep pace with demand. Otherwise, the pricing power of landlords may grow.
There's not enough housing in the U.S., so guys like us that own 80,000 well-located apartments, we're still in a pretty good spot.
A group of large landlords is now being sued for their approach to business. The lawsuits focus on their agreements with RealPage, a major provider of property management software.
Effectively, RealPage is facilitating a housing cartel.
If that's true, will landlords owe their tenants money? And what will that mean for the future of home rental prices in the United States? The lawsuit brought by the D.C. Attorney General covers over 50,000 apartment units in the district, which were allegedly charged inflated rents for years.
In the District of Columbia, we're confronting, like many communities, an affordability challenge in housing. Our housing supply doesn't keep up with the demand. So as a result, we have ever increasing pressure on pricing, and rents are already high. But what's of significance for the District of Columbia is the concentration of multifamily units, particularly in large apartment buildings with more than 50 units in them.
For example, see the portfolio of Bozzuto. The company and its affiliates allegedly use RealPage recommendations to set prices on over 15,000 housing units in the district, according to this complaint. Landlords like JBG Associates, Avalon Bay, Mid-America Apartment Communities, and Equity Residential were also named in the complaint, which was filed in November 2023.
If you talk about the large apartment buildings in our city, the market concentration is north of 50-60%. And then if you add in that type of market with the total DMV, you have close to an 80 or 90% concentration of units in these named defendants. They are not only providing housing in the District of Columbia, these are national players.
For example, Greystar managed over 700,000 units in 2023. 3 of the 14 named defendant landlords filed motions to dismiss the case in January 2024, according to D.C. Superior Court records. An initial conference for the case is scheduled for May 2024. The defendant landlords declined to comment on pending RealPage litigation. This lawsuit and others focus on the software that's provided by Richardson, Texas-based RealPage. RealPage products are used to set prices on roughly 4.5 million housing units in the United States. That includes the units in this complex, some of which had rents starting at just under $3,000 a month in January 2024.
We've been told as tenants by employees of Equity that the software takes empathy out of the equation so they can charge whatever the software tells them to charge.
Property managers started to price apartments with RealPage products in the mid-2000s.
It's pretty much unequivocal. Just turning the system on and letting it perform will outperform your manual analyst. There's almost no way it can't.
Jeffrey Roper is the inventor of YieldStar. The product was acquired by RealPage in 2002. Its model was combined with another software, Lease Rent Options, and reintroduced in a new AI tool dubbed AI-RM for short.
So you're going to find large REITs and portfolios out there. Absolutely, it's everywhere. You know, I can tell you from the design of YieldStar, it is not directly looking at what the guy across the street is doing in order to determine my rents. He has pieces falling into vacancy points in time that I do not have.
The company says its software can increase a landlord's revenues by 2 to 7%. RealPage told CNBC that it charges landlords a fixed fee for each unit that it helps manage, regardless of its rent price. What happens with the proceeds is up to private equity giant Thoma Bravo, which acquired RealPage for $10.2 billion in 2021. In court filings, Thoma Bravo claimed that it's not liable for the acts of its subsidiary. The Attorney General in D.C. says local landlords complied with RealPage's recommended prices over 90% of the time,
Our complaint alleges that the terms of agreement that the landlords and property owners agree to compel those landlords to charge the rents that the algorithm that RealPage creates spits out. So rather than making independent decisions on what the market here in DC calls for in terms of filling vacant units, landlords are compelled under the terms of their agreement with RealPage to charge what RealPage tells them.
RealPage told CNBC that its landlord customers are under no obligation to take their price suggestions. It also says that the algorithm may suggest downward price revisions, depending on the context. That could depend on how much housing gets built, according to expert testimony in Congress.
The problem is that as prices have gone up since 2011, we have not seen an entry of new developers that compete with those that are incumbent.
New construction in key housing markets like Orange County, San Francisco, and New York is low, according to forecasts shared by companies like Equity Residential.
We're 96% occupied. We raised the dividend 6% a few months ago. So the story is housing is expensive and undersupplied.
That could give landlords more power to increase rents.
This dynamic of one tenant to a massive landlord, when it's one-on-one, you really have almost no hope. They can basically crush you.
Equity's investor materials say the company started to implement apartment pricing software between 2005 and 2008.
They were using some kind of system that every day you would check and see what the rents were. The entire process had always been stressful, but over the last couple of years, especially after COVID, it just got so much worse.
Rita Botello says she moved into Portside Towers beginning in 2004. She moved out after a 2022 rent hike, which left her living with relatives.
Even in the area that we're in right now, my stepkid's apartment, the rents here are also going up. They're also now fearful.
It affects people whether they have rent control or not, right? It's manipulating what the market rate is.
Kevin is also a plaintiff in a sprawling class action lawsuit against RealPage. The consolidated case brings together numerous complaints across the US against RealPage and some of its customers. At least 34 landlords were involved in litigation. In 2023, the Justice Department filed a statement of interest in the class action, arguing that the complaints adequately allege violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act. The Honorable Judge Waverly Crenshaw in Tennessee will preside over the case. He set a February deadline for a response from the defendants. The lawsuits ask if the conduct of RealPage and the defendant landlords violate antitrust laws or otherwise meet a legal definition of collusion.
The lawsuit we brought is under our DC antitrust statute. Our lawsuit is aiming to do three things. First and foremost, it's to put an end to this practice. We're also seeking a monitor to come in and put fresh eyes on these landlords and the RealPage practices. And then finally, we're seeking monetary damages, penalties, but also restitution for tenants who have been unfairly and illegally required to pay inflated rents higher than what a naturally competitive market would have set for them.
These systems are carefully designed to avoid collusion, to avoid conflict with fair housing and any other regulatory environment. As we analyze the markets, we find the opportunity for pricing dominance to be really questionable. There's just not as much concentration as we like to see in the markets.
Roper, the inventor of YieldStar, now develops revenue management software for the e-commerce industry. Similar products are also used in hotels, grocery stores, and to set prices on toll roads. Back in Jersey City, tenants at Portside Towers believe their building is subject to rent control. The local housing authority agreed, ordering restitution that's potentially worth millions of dollars. Equity Residential told CNBC it's filed a lawsuit in federal courts challenging that decision, which was separate from the RealPage complaints.
But for the city's non-enforcement, we wouldn't be subject to RealPage software or even market rate. There is no market rate under rent control.
We not only lost our home, but we lost our community. We lost everything.
The Attorney General in DC hopes his case will preserve housing affordability in the district.
It's not only illegal and unlawful, in this day and age, it's just immoral and wrong. And that's why we felt it necessary to bring this antitrust lawsuit when we did.